Good morning. All right. All right.
So anyway,
We can pray.
guys, we we're blessed to have Tom Sanchez here. He has been with board his notes,
Mm-hmm. Sure. We end at what time? Okay. All right.
so that way we can comment
Mm-hmm.
let's pray a little bit. Lord, thank you so much for having brother Tom here. Please bless this time that we have to hear about things around the world. Thank you so much for this opportunity to have Tom here. Just bless us now as we hear about the and all the thank you so much for this time.
Amen.
All right.
Thank you, brother. Okay. Boom. So I hit that. Hit that. Okay. Sure. Sure. All right. At the end, there is a sign-up clipboard, and if you want a prayer card, there's only one left of the new ones, but I think in the hallway I had put a few of the newer cards. The older picture is okay too, I guess. And if you have an email address and would prefer to receive our prayer letter by email, then you only need to put your email address on there rather than a street address. But if you like the paper copy, please do put it on there. And take a prayer card to remember us in your prayers. If you don't care if it's the old picture, take the old picture. That's okay. Picture's a picture, right? Pretty much. I don't think we changed drastically in our looks, but if that makes a difference. The only thing is on the email address on the old card, you got to put a dot between our first names and our last names. They made that mistake. So this is correct, but it's small in the lower left-hand corner. There's a dot between Tom and Sanchez, a dot between Michelle and Sanchez on the old card. Is that me?
So that's me. Sorry.
They didn't put the dot in, okay? And Grace Ministries International, that's our logo. They modified it a little bit, and that's what it looks like now. It's on my shirt too. And all right, I'm pointing it that way, not at the screen. Like I said, I'm pointing. Okay. So we were missionaries starting back in the 1980s. We received our call in about 1981-82 when Marie Vinton, Baba V, if some of you remember Baba V, he went out to Africa and started his mission work in 1928. And his wife was Marie. She died in 1982, and that's when the Lord poked my heart. And we were in a church in West Allis, Wisconsin. It had started out as being in Milwaukee. That was the site of the original Grace Bible College in Milwaukee. It was right at the Fundamental Bible Church where Charles Baker had been the pastor for some years. And that's the church we were in, out for myself, out of Catholicism. I wasn't saved until my late teen years. I'd love to tell you the story of my mom's conversion and my conversion in part through my mom and the same school of people that the Lord put us in. But my wife came out of an unchurched background, and gradually watching all those missionaries come through for conferences and things, that the Lord spoke to me. I was a registered nurse at the time, and I thought, can I use medical? But I also spoke some Spanish. Not good, but I thought, okay, I got a leg up on a language. Maybe we should go to a Spanish-speaking country. And when we met with the mission leadership, they told us, no, we need your medical skills more than you can learn a language easily enough, especially if you know another language already. Zaire was what Congo was called, and that's where there was a medical work historically. Of all the fields, it was where it was most needed in the jungles of Maniema is the zone and region. So this is us when the prayer card was first made for us in 1985. Wow, isn't that something? And our 3 children were born already. Our oldest, Samara, the girl on the right. Our son is in the middle, and our youngest little one, Rebecca. And those children, okay, today, our oldest daughter is a missionary counselor in Thailand. She and her husband work there. Her husband works with orphans, and so they're carrying on a ministry there at this time. They're a volunteer. They're able to be self-supported through Glenn's income. Glenn Phillip. Next, please. My son married a missionary. He didn't intend to, by the way. In fact, he told me single missionary gals are a type I'm staying away from them. But he was off to Asia on an adventure, and the Lord knew that Myra Omicton with TCM was there for him, and she was praying for a husband too, and it just, God put them together, because my son was not looking to get married. No way, no way. He was an adventurer, but I said, hey, there's some TCM missionaries in Cambodia. They can meet you at the plane, help you get a motorcycle and so on, because he was just going to motorcycle all over Asia. And he never got out of Cambodia. So that was the Lord's provision. And then our youngest daughter is a registered nurse in Manhattan, and she is to this day with our one granddaughter. And Sophia is a high school junior, loves to sing, pretty good singer. Part of the this New York City Children's Choir, or Young People's Choir. Anyway, pretty cool. All right, next one. Why Burundi? You can start clicking through these. There's like 3 bullet points. Okay, Glenn? All right. In 2015, a little bit of an update on the history. In 2000, that youngest daughter graduated from high school. All 3 of our children were then destined for the United States, and they did not know where home was in the world. That's kind of the feeling that can happen after many years, especially we would do 4 years in Africa, then come home for a year, 4 years in Africa, come home for a year. We did 3 sets of those. The 3rd time got cut to 3 years, and the kids didn't feel close to our relatives. Some of them were unsaved and wasn't all that good, and we knew we needed to start a home base for them. So we went home to the United States in 2000 and stayed, bought a home and restarted life, and keep going, those next bullet points. And in 2015, the GMI asked us to continue the ministry somewhere in Africa, and we visited multiple African countries. And Michelle and I had, at the same time, during those years from 2000 to 2015, we didn't actually leave until 2018, I became a family nurse practitioner, which is at a master's level. And then my university opened up where I started teaching as a family nurse practitioner at Grand Valley State University. They started a DNP doctoral program, and they believe that all nurse practitioners now should be at a doctoral level. So I went through that, and so I'm a doctor of nursing practice in the family practice realm, kind of generically like a medical doctor, GP, in that same frame of what I do. And so that helped us get caught up on some extra credentials that would be useful in Africa. And my wife, in the meantime, pursued academic writing, and she was a faculty advisor on their writing project. So she developed quite high-level skills evaluating written documents. You can go ahead. Oh, that's me. All right. More of why Burundi. You can click 2 of them off. Also, Burundi was a place of a lot of violence. And that did not intimidate Michelle and I. Number one, our kids were grown, and we did not have to worry about small children and the extra fear for your children in a violent environment. And that's what we went through in Zaire. There were times when there was gunfire around where we were. We heard gunfire regularly, and it was sometimes pretty close. And we had to repair bullet holes on the house we lived in. Okay? So it had been struck quite a number of times. We also knew Swahili and French, and me, French, Michelle, Swahili. I know Swahili and French, and those languages are also useful in Burundi. We can use them right away. So those are the reasons why we believe the Lord called us back to Burundi. We left finally in 2018, but GMI's direction said, could you please go to Zambia? We want you to go there. There are no missionaries there anymore, and there's a national church structure there, and it seems like it's moving forward, but if you could encourage it in some way. Well, we discovered that, and this has happened over and over again, we've had people who gravitate toward leadership in national organizations, denominations, if you will, and I'm now totally against us starting any kind of national church because that's a denomination. And what happens with denominations is you get rascals who see the power and the property that accrues in a national denomination, and they gravitate toward leadership. We've had people who've stolen from the national church in Congo, in Tanzania, and in Zambia. I've seen it all over the place. And rascals. When I was there in Zambia, starting in 2018 through 2020, in 2019, I was looking at the books. And it just so happened the Lord provided. There was money going towards orphanage work in the northern part of the country. And a guy from that northern church, which was hard to get to, he was in Kabwe, the city that I was at. And we met, and I said, hey, how's that orphanage work? And he said, who are you? Who am I? Because he came walking into the church office, and I was sitting there. I said, you mean you don't know who I am? I mean, not that I'm somebody important, but I'd been in the country a year already, and the current leader was to have informed everybody, oh, we have a missionary who's with us. He didn't tell anybody. You don't know that you've got a missionary who's here? I've been here for a year now. Over a year by that time. Anyway, it was a strange thing. And then I said, how's that orphanage work going? He said, you guys stopped sending the money a year and a half ago, a couple of years. What? I was seeing money transferred in every month. About $750 a month. You're not getting the money? No, you cut it off. GMI said, you guys can take care of that. I said, no, that money's been coming in every month. I see the reports now that I'm a missionary here. And so we went digging. And another Zambian who is friendly with the police force and actually knows a sergeant in the anti-fraud squad, short end of the story is, went to trial. I was the chief witness against the president of the National Grace Church Organization, who had been pocketing $750 a month. Okay? And evidently that's been a little bit all too typical of the leadership over the years. I'm telling you that frankly. I don't care. I'm 67 years old. I'm out of this. I'm not going to just try to fix it in ways that don't fix it. So, my personal position is I'm not starting a national church in Burundi, and you'll see why, because that's a basic reason. But there's a better way the Lord has shown us to go about it. Anyway, I took a lot of extra time, and we'll get a little bit more into that. Burundi is that little red country there in the heart of Africa. It's the Great Lakes region. And there it is on a map where you can see more. The dark green is Burundi. Light green Tanzania is on the bordering it on the east, across the lake and right across a river On the west is the former Zaire. So we used to come into Bujumbura when we wanted to get to Bukavu, and from Bukavu we would take a plane to get down here in the jungle to Kama. That's where we worked 3 out of the many years we were there. Most of the other time was in Bukavu here. This is all Congo, and it continues up north, it continues down south. This is known as the Great Lakes region of Africa. Lake Tanganyika here, that does border a chunk of Burundi, is 400 miles long. It goes further down. So it's a huge lake, of course. So sometimes there's just that confusion. And Lake Victoria, I believe, is in the world, has the most either surface area or the most fresh water of all the Great Lakes in the world. It's got some title to it. So in other words, these are huge lakes around here. And we're from Michigan, Wisconsin, Michelle and I, and that's known as the Great Lakes region of America. So sometimes you go, oh, Great Lakes, you mean you're in America? No, no, no. It's the Great Lakes School of Theology that my wife works at. So we used to fly into either Kigali or Bujumbura and then travel by road over to Bukavu. And from there, you'd have to go by airplane to get down into the jungle. So some of the Grace missionaries were at Kama and also toward Kindu we had work, and Fred Vinton was underneath this rectangle here at a place down there. Or actually right in there on that road. All of that pretty much in jungle. And that was the background of our experience, where I did medical things, but I also taught in Bible schools and preached and did some evangelism programs, that sort of thing. So now we're in this country of Burundi, and we'll tell you a little bit about it now. The makeup is about 85% Hutu and 15% Tutsi. Those two tribal names may sound familiar to you because those are the two tribes in Rwanda where there was a huge slaughter, the genocide of 1986, 1984, 84, 85. Yeah. And the same tribes in Burundi, same problems, although the genocide and killings occurred in small batches here and there and spread out over many, many years. So those two tribes don't get along. There is also a very small group of what those of us who have gray hair remember used to call pygmy. Now they call them Batwa. They're a people who is a minority, difficult to reach. There's a very low number of people who go to school. There's lots of HIV. Still, agriculture is the main source of income for Burundi. They grow coffee and tea, and those are big export things. A pretty good tea and a pretty good coffee, I'm told. But it's also among the 5 poorest countries in the world. About 12 million population. I saw a statistic somewhere that said that they estimate that about 40% of the people do not have enough to eat. Obesity is not a problem there. It's a small problem among the well-to-do and middle class who have the income and still have the drive to eat a lot of carbs. We live in the capital city, economic capital, I should say, of Bujumbura. The political capital has been moved to a town called Gitega, but it's the biggest city, over 1 million in population. It sits on a plain at the north end of Lake Tanganyika, about 3,000 feet up. So because we're only a few hundred miles from the equator, that should be a really hot place. But because we're about 3,000 feet up, it stays in the 80s every day. Every day. Every day, it's somewhere in the 80s. I don't think it's ever been in the upper 70s during the day. And there's been some times when it goes up into the 90s for heat. It'll get a little hotter, but never, that I've experienced so far, cooler. And so if you go to the east, out of Bujumbura, you can see you go up into mountains. Those mountains are 7,000 to 8,000 feet, I think, is some of the higher ranges. So it gets pretty cold. So it is a place where we've brought jackets and cool weather thing, hats and stuff, so when we're staying up in those areas. Like that, okay. GMI has grown the number of Africans who are part of our mission teams. And in our case, some of those legacy churches, like the church that's been I think the first missionaries went in there in the 1930s. Same thing with, or roughly the same time frame that they were into Congo, and certainly since the 1980s or 90s in Zambia. So there are missionaries now who are from those countries who work with us. The Mwenda Poles, Method and Omelina, work with us in Burundi, and they're from Tanzania. He is a graduate of the pastoral program and actually taught in Bible schools and pastor schools. So what we're doing is traditionally we would say church planting, but I'm saying supplanting, S-U-P, supplanting, because number one, I already told you, I do not want to start a national denomination. I think it's a place that draws people in. I think the model that is more biblical is independent local churches that associate voluntarily and have their own governing structures within the local church and so on. And Paul called elders to lead them. Supplanting means that we have found that there are huge numbers of churches that already exist, and there are leaders in those churches that call themselves pastors, apostles, bishops, prophets, etc., leading these churches. So we offer them, they ask us, oh, can you come preach in my church? Sure. And we preach good things, obviously. I would hope that'd be obvious, right? We preach good things. And they are hungry for theological training, because most of these guys using all these titles, they're just using that stuff because they heard it somewhere, they're watching it on TV, they're hearing it on radio, they're seeing it on the internet. By the way, the internet has exploded. Everybody's got a phone, not necessarily a smartphone, but even poor people will have a simple text phone and voice phone all over the place. So they're exposed to things, and many of them, if they've had education theologically, it's from a seminar they attended. So they'll have a seminar certificate or two, and no grading, whatever, but they're hungry for this education. So what we've offered them that we found really works well is the Prison Mission Association Bible Correspondence Fellowship paper lessons. We have installed those in churches, and they are hungry for them. And that gives them an introduction to good theology, including the mid-Acts dispensational position, and they eat it up. And after a while, we then graduate them to in-seat education. We also do evangelism and community development. I am a doctor of nursing practice. I'll tell you a little bit about that. I use that as a way to reach out to people. Also, we are drawing in people from those surrounding countries and working with leaders, quality leaders in the Democratic Republic of Congo, formerly Zaire, and in Tanzania and Zambia, helping to work with them so that good leaders are helped in their ministries. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Some of the major lessons we've learned in this time in Burundi is that each country has unique culture and subcultures. Missionaries often make the mistake of saying Africans are like this, the African mentality. Well, that's like saying Moabites are like Chicagoans. Wouldn't that be silly? Oh, you guys are just like Chicagoans, right? In your mentality and thinking and all that, or like New Yorkers, or New Yorkers are like you. And you come down here and find the culture is quite different in some good ways and maybe some not so good ways. Every culture has positives and negatives. But you're not the same. And you might hit some walls. One of the things that we discovered in regards to reading and education is that Burundians aren't so into reading. In fact, there is this proverb that if you want to hide some money, put the money in a book, and it will remain hidden, and no one will find it. Okay, put it in a book. But we have found that those prison-type lessons, correspondence-type lessons that have a paragraph of reading and then ask some questions, that bit of reading, question, answer, and they're guided right to the scripture that contains the answer, that kind of closely guided reading that was originally intended for prisoners works really well for Burundians, and the lesson systems have taken off. We are now distributing those lessons to about 15 different denominations. One of them has over 60 churches in it. Others are like 3, 4, 5 churches, Things like they're not very big, some of them 6'8". So it sounds like huge, but it's still 15 different denominations comprising probably around 100 different local churches are participating with those lessons. We did need to translate those lessons to Kirundi because Kirundi, even though some Swahili is used, French is used, the vast majority of the population has Kirundi as the real deep heart language that they know better than Swahili and Kirundi. And so there's a fair number of people, if they haven't gone to school at least through 10th grade or so, don't speak French or Swahili very well. It's a fairly conservative culture. USAID, Agency for International Development, that Trump wanted to get rid of. I'm happy about that. I can tell you why. If you thought, oh, kids aren't going to get fed and all that kind of baloney. You know, the rough economics of it is when the U.S. spends $1 million, oh, by the way, they spend it by the billion, not million, probably a tenth or a fifth of it actually gets used on the ground. So when you're spending $1 billion and you spend that much money and you end up getting 5 million, 10 million actually getting spent on the ground, you can take lots of pictures. 5 and 10 million bucks goes a long way in those countries. So you can take pictures of wonderful things and send them back. See what we've done? But they're not telling you that this huge percentage of money is spent on people who go out and study the problem first. And they fly first class. They stay in the best hotels. They eat at the best restaurants. And the Burundian and other host countries love it because it brings lots of money. So they love AID because they rent the best houses in the city. They stay at the best hotels and all of that. So it's a very common kind of thing to love USAID because it spends a lot of money uselessly for the most part and often does the wrong thing with the funds that they do use. A very quick example, because this is almost diabolical. There is an issue of supplying so-called peacekeepers in countries, hot zones. Right across the lake from us is a hot zone in Congo, and among the multinational force going in there, paid for by the UN, but with largely U.S. funds, to go keep peace, peacekeepers. They've been doing this in Haiti as well. You've heard it for years, for decades now. The peacekeepers go in, and it's a really good gig for the country that sends them because the money goes into their coffers and probably a tenth of it actually gets to the soldier on the ground. But the soldier on the ground, who might only make $50 a month, is now getting $200 a month or $300. And the U.S. is happy because we believe we're paying those soldiers $1,000 a month, and that's cheap by our standards, right? Oh, only costs $1,000 for a Burundian peacekeeper? Well, the Burundian peacekeeper only gets a percentage of that, but he's happy, and he wants the thing to keep going because he's making $200-300 a month. And his normal salary would be like $50. So, when they start getting a little too peaceful, I know this is happening because I talk to missionaries who work right in that zone. The UN peacekeepers supply arms to one side or the other to keep things hot so they can keep being there and being paid. And also the refugee camps. The refugee camps are a place where you get a green card. So the people who stay in the refugee camps want to stay there because you get the food supplied to you. Life is, at least it's not great, but it's about the same as it was back where they came from. And, oh, by the way, they take a certain percentage of the people out of the camps and send them to Canada, a European country, or the United States. Because, oh, those poor people, they've been in those refugee camps for 5, 6, 7, 8 years, 10 years, 12 years, 15 years now. Let's do a lottery system with the green cards. And so this is stuff we're importing those folks out of those things to get to the United States. Woo! So they don't want to leave the camp. It's their ticket to be getting out of the whole region. And so what they really should be doing is going back to their country and working toward peace, right? you need to know more, I'll tell you. But I'm happy that USAID has been cut off at the knees, hopefully more than that. So we discovered that our teaching resources are going to become a key lasting legacy. So that's where Michelle and I put most of our energy. The Lord has made us through our degree seeking that we have attained. We're pretty good at taking literature and making it better. One of the things we found is we need to get it into kind of an international English, getting rid of weird, American colloquialisms like the rubber meets the road. That doesn't translate very well. And the problem of snowballing. So we have to change words like that to find something that will translate into many, many other countries' use of English and understanding of English. And we're also helping to share those resources then across borders, because with AI and computer translation, now we're able to very quickly, relatively speaking, get things into French, Swahili, and Kirundi. And we are covering that problem of the lack of quality theological education. The biblical foundation is extremely weak. The Christian presence is described as a mile wide, but only an inch deep. So lots of Christianity. They've heard the name of Christ, but many, many people don't really understand salvation. It's that problem that Paul spoke of as that when there's a false gospel, it's really no gospel at all. A works-based gospel is no gospel at all. So even though they're Christian, they're not saved and born again. Now, I realize there's a lot of that in the United States too. But in terms of mission effort, we need to keep going to those places that are so-called Christianized. Islam and cult Christianity are there. In fact, Michelle and I chose to live in a Muslim neighborhood. We are smack dab right in it. And it's not that there aren't any Muslims outside of that area, but it's right in the heat of it. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. So after students study those paper lessons, or if they have a pretty high educational level, meaning they've graduated from high school at least and can read and write decently, we can put them right into in-seat education. In other words, 1 week we decided was the best kind of interval that they could manage being away. Most of these folks are married and have jobs. And just like you, they can't leave their family for a month. It was the original vision. Oh, let's have them come for a month at a time. And other places in the past, we've done it for 3 months at a time. Bring the students for 3 months of study. And it costs so much money. And it's so difficult for them to stay away from their family. In agricultural villages in the jungle of Congo, sometimes that would work. But these guys come for 1 week, and so we can give them 2 courses of 15 hours each, so they get 2 credits. And this is a building that we're renting for $100 for a week. $100. And it's a place for them to sleep, shower, classrooms, and kitchen and eating, right? The whole gamut. We don't need anything else, so $100. This is in Bujumbura. There's another place that we go to where for the classroom, we paid about the equivalent of $20 to rent the classroom for a week. And then we paid like $100 for a hotel for like 18 guys. 18 guys plus a couple of translators, $100 for the week. Okay, so it's pretty cheap. We found that economically, this is a far better way to go than to build buildings, buy land, build a Bible school. Then from the whole country, you've got to bring everybody to a central location. What we're doing is we're putting these schools, if you will, institute around the country. And the teachers travel to the locations to give the courses. And so I wrote there 6 to 8 denominations represented, but it's now up to like 15. The age range, look at that, 19 to 75. So we've got late teenagers up to older men who are studying the Word. And we discovered, as we suspected, that about half of these leaders who attend our in-seat education aren't saved. When they come in, the first course that they get is on salvation, one of the first 15-hour courses, and they're asked to receive Christ, and about half of them are going, wow, I didn't know what it meant to be born again. I didn't know what it meant to be saved. And so they're getting saved through the work of education. What happened there? Uh-oh. Those are some of the comments we received from them. I like the last one. I have to take this back to my church. That's what we're hoping for. if these folks who have ministries in their church, because we take people who are doing some kind of ministry, they're going to go back and teach them. We're working with human translators. We still are going to need them, even though there's been great advances in computer translation. It still can't do Kirundi really well. They will need to do a lot of our proofreading. So there's a lot of things that we need translated, and we're also working with folks from DR Congo so that they can use the same materials just translated into French. So some of these guys are from Congo, and whoa. Our official, Eddie, this guy I wanted you to see. Eddie's a Zambian working in Zambia. We're still staying connected with prison outreach, and now Eddie graduated from the international teachers training that Bill Vinton and Asong were doing, and Eddie is now able to go out and actually teach seminars on grace doctrine in churches. And he's targeting churches that are not part of the national denomination. So we are technically in Burundi at the invitation of this Free Methodist Church, and Michelle and I have had to teach a few courses at that university to maintain our status. I taught some clinical nursing. Michelle teaches academic writing and research for them, but it's only part of the time. I mentioned that we live in this Muslim neighborhood. This is a little video taken right out the front door. We're up a few stories on this street. This is actually a very light day, so it's a very, very busy. Most of these are hardware stores, and we live on the third floor looking down. And at the end of this, you'll see a minaret tower, which there are 4 of them around the apartment building. Starts with the first prayer, and they take turns at 4:45 a.m. and they blast it out on megaphones, not just megaphones, but speakers out into the street. So there's all kinds of different Muslims from different countries, more than 4 mosques. I also have found that the workers who come in are the worker bees, if you will, in this neighborhood are black Africans, and they don't own anything, but they're making $1 to $5 a day just unloading trucks and loading them up again as people buy things. I started doing church on the sidewalk, and this is what that can look like. I parked myself next to the semi-trailer that usually the sound off the street, and we do a Bible lesson, and most of these guys that weren't born again now are, and they come, and it's part of just building them up. They're quite poor. They live far away from good churches, so they're at least getting fed once a week there. Also, up in the hallway of the apartment building we live in, which is virtually all but one other apartment is occupied by Muslims, there's a space right outside our front door, and I hold a clinic there every morning but Sunday. So that outreach to these folks is a good way of reaching them with the gospel as well. In this hallway, we find these folks are ultra low income, that $1 to $5 a day. And there's also missionaries who call on me, and also some other expat foreigners. And we've become known for treating wounds. And I found a guy who needed 1 shoe. I lost my left shoe in a motorcycle accident, and I had a right shoe. And they found me a guy who had a right foot, but no left foot. And so now he was able to make use of my 1 right shoe. And so we are going to be training elders and other leaders so that they have a solid foundation and know salvation by grace alone. And they're bringing those Bible studies both into high schools and churches. And that's our QR code. You can look us up real quick. And we do currently need resupply of our monthly support. It does run into problems where people get quite elderly, pass away, and so some of our funds drop off, and we need others to continually kind of take up the slack where that comes. We're about 5 minutes over, and I see some people are doing the QR code. Now, I just would like to show you, what do you think? Should I be the Pope? Take it, get the right. People have written to me and said, wow, you look like the Pope. So that might be a new tool of evangelization there.
You guys have any questions for Tom?
Welcome.
Being here. We are super blessed to have you here and the wonderful work that you've been doing for such a long time. If you do have questions or anything for Tom, you can always find him and ask him. He also has a sign-up sheet that you can grab at the end here to get his newsletter